Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you and your families cruise a little bit smarter, but we are not talking about cruising, we're talking about Run Disney, and I'd like to welcome our co-host, Chris Bright from LA. How you doing today, Chris?
Doing so good. I'm so sad to be back at work, but it's fine. It's fine. That's life.
I think Joe from the Disney Deciphered podcast, he had you and Seth basically moving into Walt Disney World this week, or this past month.
Literally.
With how long you guys were down there.
We were down there for like 9 days. It was so good.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to actually, I feel like I'm in and out of places always so quickly. It'd be nice to actually spend 9 days somewhere like that where you could really just kind of relax a little bit and really take your time doing some of the things you do.
Yeah, because we haven't done Disney World all that often, we didn't relax even at all. But it was exciting to explore and to be up early and out late every day. It was a lot of fun. Well,
we are going to talk about Run Disney, and you and Seth ran your first Run Disney race and your first half marathon. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. It was so much fun.
I'm super excited. We've got kind of a panel today. I'd like to welcome back to the show, good friend of the show, Lake from the Mouse Gen on YouTube and Pretty Much Anything Nerdy podcast. How you doing today, Lake?
Good. Still a little sore, not going to lie.
Yeah, and congratulations to you. You ran your first marathon.
Thank you. Yeah, it was quite the experience, but I'm definitely excited to give another crack at it in the future.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. And our final panelist today, or co-host, is Steve from Tampa. Welcome back to the show, Steve.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
It was fun to, the weird thing about this goofy whole podcast thing is I had never met Chris until this past week, and then neither one of us had met each other between Lake and Steve and I and whatnot, and it was kind of cool to have an event like Run Disney and Marathon Weekend to actually meet up with you guys.
Yeah.
It was great. Now we just need a DCL podcast cruise.
We do need to figure out some way to do that. And if my wife has any say in it, she really wants to do the Castaway Challenge next year, but I'm not sure if that'll work or not. But maybe one of these days just to keep the Run Disney thing going. Well, just to, I guess, jump into it, let's start with you, Chris, and we'll try and kind of go around a little bit. Chris, why don't you talk about your overall experiences this weekend with Run Disney and the races you ran? Just kind of a quick overview before we go into like the specifics, kind of your thoughts as you went into it.
So there are thousands of people who do this, and it's not a slow time at Disney World in terms of the theme parks or just like the overall crowds. So I was going into it really hopeful that Disney would be very organized and that they would have sort of as many of their ducks in a row as possible, given the number of people. And for the most part, I felt like that was true. We picked the half marathon partially because it was the only thing, the half and the full were the only things that don't sell out basically the moment they go on sale. And in years past, I've heard that even the half and the full have sold out more quickly. But this year they were on sale for months and months. So by the time we decided to run our first Run Disney race, those were our only options. And I knew that I didn't want to start with a marathon. And Seth would have been happy to start with like a 5K or a 10K. So this was sort of like a compromise of like, let's do the half. And yeah, those are my initial thoughts was like, that's why we chose the half. And then when we got there, we were making a big vacation out of it. So we actually didn't spend too much time thinking about the race until maybe a couple days before.
And Steve, you've run quite a few Run Disney races as well. What were your overall thoughts of the weekend that just took place?
This will be my third. So third half, I did Star Wars in April. Pretty much the running journey started about a year ago. So Star Wars in April, did Wine and Dine in November, and did the half marathon. I thought it was good. It was the most crowded and sort of the least organized, I think, of the three that I was involved in. And even saying, let me just give you context, at least organized, it was still incredibly well organized. And I think one of the tougher things to it was the biggest variable, especially when you have races in Florida, which is the weather. Weather was brutal for the most part on Saturday and particularly on Sunday. So I had a great time overall. We had a lot of family in town. We stayed from Thursday to Sunday and had an awesome time. And I think I had just a little more fun with this one than I had in other ones, meaning that I just, for the first time, I would stop and take character photos and stuff. I hadn't done that before, honestly. It was just so humid to me that I just stopped. I just gave up on a PR and just was like, let me just have some fun with this. Overall, good weekend. Very good weekend.
And Lake, I guess you're our resident expert. You have run the most races out of all of us. You and Katie ran this weekend. What were your thoughts? And can you kind of give an overview of what you and Katie ran as well?
This was, I believe, my 13th weekend and 27th Run Disney race, 26th, somewhere in there. We had a great time. This is one of my favorite weekends overall. This one is probably the second most crowded, if not the most crowded, Princess being the other one. The other two were much more low-key. But we had a great time. I thought the themes are great. That kind of like retro running theme that they put on the shirts was really cool. Me and my wife, Katie, both ran the 10K together. And then I also did my first marathon on Sunday.
Good on you, too, for getting that first marathon under your belt. And you killed it, man, in some pretty tough conditions. I know you didn't quite hit your PR that you were looking for, or the number you were quite looking for, but, man, you did an awesome job on Sunday. I did some numbers, and maybe, Lake, you can help me with this a little bit, but just to give some perspective as far as how many people are down there this weekend. I couldn't find any numbers on the 5K, but for the 10K, there was a total of 12,572 finishers. And for all of us that ran the half, I think you'll kind of understand this. There was 21,611 finishers versus the marathon. There was 14,106. Now, obviously, that's total finishers. Some people may have dropped out. Some other people might have signed up. But how does that? Do you have any perspective on how that compares on some of the other weekends, Lake?
The only other weekend that's like quite up there in that number, like I said, is Princess. Typically, I believe the half has a little more finishers or around that, and then they don't have a full. But the other two races, the halves are way less, which is why they can actually run the different course that they do for that. And I believe they're usually in like the 14 to the 16,000.
Yeah, it was just kind of interesting to see that, which we can get into this a little bit, but as you kind of stated that the half is really the most popular race as far as numbers-wise, and that really kind of bore out, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. But before we jump into that and we talk about the expo and the races itself, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but why don't we go around and talk about where we all stayed for the marathon and any pluses or minuses for where you guys stayed. And why don't you start with you, Chris?
We stayed at Pop Century. It's recently renovated. I don't know exactly what that means, whether that's a year or 2 years ago, but the rooms are nice. They have a weird, cool bed layout where the bed is actually like a table and chairs until you need it. The second bed, that is. So, yeah, the rooms are nice. The biggest sale for this, though, honestly, for us was that it was on the Skyliner. We used the Skyliner a lot, and we loved it. It was super convenient. And because that race day transportation can be a mess, I think we'll probably talk a bit about that. It was nice at the end of the half to just walk through Epcot and hop on the Skyliner and get back to our hotel without having to worry about any of the buses. I liked Pop, and I think I would recommend it to anybody who maybe had a party of 2 or 3.
And Steve, where'd you guys stay?
We did a DVC stay. We did a split stay. Started at Bay Lake for the first time I stayed there. I had a 2-bedroom villa. And I had my brother-in-law and his family. We're a family of 5. So there was actually 9 of us in the 2-bedroom, and it felt spacious. It was awesome. And then we went over to Kidani Village for the rest of the weekend and stayed in a 2-bedroom there as well.
So for the race,
it was wonderful.
For the race day, you were leaving out of Kidani then?
Yeah, we left out of Kidani.
Okay, we'll talk about the buses getting there. But overall, as far as a place to stay for the race day, you recommend that?
It was fantastic. I think I'm out like with the first buses that start. So I never personally got into where some of the traffic started. I'm usually out pretty early. I like to get there into the crowds early, but it was seamless. It was great.
And Lake, where'd you guys stay? Well, I know where you guys stayed, but can you tell everybody else where you stayed?
Yeah, we also did a split stay, but we were actually in each of the resorts for a different race. So the first half we were in Wilderness, and we actually got upgraded to a 1-bedroom in Copper Creek. It's one of our favorite rooms, like on property ever. We love this room so much. And it was pretty solid. We didn't have any busing issues there. And then before the marathon, we had actually switched over to a deluxe studio in Bay Lake Tower. I was a little unsure about staying over there because for races that start in Epcot, so Princess and the marathon weekend, you have to take the monorail over there. And I will say this was the best transportation like option that we've had getting to a race. While everyone was stuck in traffic for those days, the monorail just goes right on over and you get off there and there's a full like real bathroom right there by Epcot. It was awesome.
You guys kind of whisked by and looked down at all of us stuck in the buses, huh?
We really did. It was great.
Well, Anawake and I stayed over at Saratoga Springs. We did a DVC stay at Saratoga. That was the only place that we could get into. We've stayed there twice now, and actually we really like Saratoga. It's kind of quiet over there. We had a 1-bedroom. We didn't quite need that, but once again, that's all we could get. But the last 2 marathons, it's been super easy getting there, and it wasn't until this one, and we could talk about it as we've kind of alluded to. It was a little bit more traffic this time, but overall, we really like staying at Saratoga for kind of the quietness. You can walk over to Disney Springs. One thing I want to throw out there, and I wonder if you guys notice this as well, for people that are worried about food issues. Obviously, all those resorts have different restaurants you can eat at, but I noticed when we were at Saratoga the last couple of years, they always have like a bag of goodies that you can buy, and it really wasn't too bad. I think it was $7, and it gave you like a banana, a bagel, and some different things like that. So you can, if you don't bring food with you and you're staying at the resorts, you can pick up one of those. Have you guys seen that as well?
I did that one year. I actually thought it was a solid option. It was pretty similar to what I would already eat before the races. And you should also note too, a lot of the quick service locations are starting to do like basically soft openings during that like 3 to 3:30 time. They'll have a sign out saying if your location is doing it, but they're offering, a couple different like continental options typically.
That's what they did over at Pop. Similar, opened at 3 and had lots and lots of like continental, carb heavy, grab and go type of breakfast options. And I saw a lot of runners in there that morning.
I didn't see that. I guess there's no quick serve over at Kidani, so maybe that's why. I guess you'd have to go tomorrow if they did have it open, but I didn't see any of those options.
Yeah, at Saratoga they had it so it was kind of prepackaged, so you could throw it in the fridge if you had a fridge in your room as well. So if you wanted to get it the night before and didn't want to have to worry about it in the morning. Well, let's turn to the expo. Steve, why don't you explain what the expo is?
The expo's open. It starts usually one day before the first race, before the 5K. So this weekend it happened to be Thursday through Sunday. Normally it's Friday through Sunday. So it would open Wednesday through Saturday, closes the day before. So you have to go in to the expo and effectively pick up your bib. That's what you can do on a minimal level. You just have to go pick up your bib. They do same-day bib pickup, but obviously with the tens of thousands of people that run these races, they don't want really anyone picking it up same day. They really want you to pick it up before. It's over at ESPN Wide World of Sports. This time was a little different workflow, I think maybe because of the size of the event, but they had the bib, which is always separate from where you go pick up your shirt, which is actually in the back of the expo. And the expo is effectively like featuring a number of different vendors that are geared towards running gear, athletic things like, bands and foam rollers and stuff like that. And also just like tech. I think for Wine and Dine, for example, Aftershocks sponsored it. So they had Aftershocks in the main booth there selling headphones. And some of it is discounted for the expo. So you go in, you get your bib, you show your ID. That was, I believe, in the Hewlett-Packard Center, it's called. Maybe I'm mixing up. And then I went over to, I think you go over to the Visa Center, which is where the actual expo is. And in the back of the expo, you walk through it, which is fairly genius because you got to walk through all the vendors, which is what they want you to do. They want you spending money. And then you go in and pick up your shirt. And then there's the separate building, which is going to be the first building that you see, is going to have a lot of the merch options. And boy, there was a lot of merch as well. And that, again, is closest to the parking lot. I should also just quickly say, try to print your waiver to bring to get your bib before you go. Otherwise, you have to go inside that building and print out your waiver. Just an extra, if you're on a crunch for time, it's just an extra step there. But it can take quite a bit of time, even if you're just doing the bib pickup. But most people are there to just get into that merch area. You do not have to be a runner to get into the merch area.
And Lake, did you have any thoughts on the expo this year?
Overall, I thought the expo was pretty good. We did not get there until Thursday afternoon, so the second day of the expo. We still found that there was a pretty good selection of merch. The only things that I heard were like of limited quantity didn't affect us, and that was some of the Goofy and Dopey merch either wasn't available or was sold out. And there were a couple pins that were sold out, but I think if you wanted something from your race, you were going to be able to find it. The only other comment I kind of had was there seems to be a trend where the like actual vendor part of the expo tends to scale back a little bit every time. I don't know if they're just like pricing some of the smaller companies out or whatnot, but it is becoming a little harder to find some of the race necessities, especially if you're a guy, because if you didn't know, the ratio of most of these events is somewhere around like 75 female to 25 male. So a lot of the expo merch is catered towards women. So I was on the hunt to find like some new shorts, and I couldn't find anything.
And let's circle back around to you, Chris. This is yours and Seth's first time, and I don't mean to make you put any words in Seth's mouth, but what was your thought about the expo as you stopped off to pick up your bib and your T-shirt and kind of look at the merch?
We prioritized going to parks, and on Wednesday, the first day that we could have gone to the expo, we decided to do Rise of the Resistance and Hollywood Studios. And so we knew that we were going to be getting to the expo basically a day late. And the only reason I say that is because everything we had read online and even what Lake had said, some of the merch sells out on that first day. But we were also running the half, and we didn't think that would be an issue. And we were right. When we got there on Thursday, we were able to get some pins that were half themed. We got the like necessary and required 13.1 magnet for our car. I think I got a pretty cool Run Disney hat. You got that one, Steve, I think. With the merch we were satisfied with, and we went basically Thursday morning, pretty close to when it opened. You take a bus to get there. It's at the ESPN zone, so you can get there from pretty much any resort. I will say it's funny that you do have to basically go to 3 separate giant arenas. If you want to go to merch, that's in one arena. When you're picking up your bib, that's in another one, and then the actual expo. I would plan to spend at least an hour and a half there. I think maybe when all is said and done, we were there for about 2 hours. Much to my dismay, I had left my running sunglasses in California, but I knew that many of the booths sell running sunglasses for fairly cheap. So I was able to pick up a new pair of sunglasses at the expo. I wore a green shirt. And so I did this like photo op, but it was in front of a green screen. And so
all you can see is your face.
I basically disappeared into the Run Disney background, and it was just my head floating next to Seth. So if you want to do any fun pictures, don't wear green. Interestingly, there are other races there. Like we had a real hard sell from someone who was from the Miami half marathon, who was like, please come to our marathon. Please, it's underselling this year. It'll be so cheap. So yeah, there were definitely lots and lots of opportunities if you wanted to sign up for other races or if you wanted to just sort of check out. They had some pretty interesting like snacks and runner energy and things like that. I was into the expo and I thought it was pretty cool. Overall, just a fun way to spend a morning and get excited for the race. They do this thing where it's like they're interviewing random people who are going to run, and they just play it on TVs around the expo and outside. So it'll be like, we're reporting live from ESPN Zone. And then it'll be like some family from Iowa being like, we've never run before, and this is so much fun, and this is great. And then they would be like, and now we're reporting for this family. And so it just had like kind of a kinetic energy about it that, I don't know, it got Seth and I pretty excited. So I will say it's a fun sort of ramp up to the actual running event.
Well, we are on a little bit of a time crunch. I'm going to be the Green Army man here, and we'll get us through the half marathon because Steve's got to get back and actually go to work so he can make money
to give to Disney.
To give to Disney, so he can sign up for his next Run Disney race, right?
I literally booked another hotel room today and Moonlight Magic this morning. That's been my morning.
Yeah, perfect.
So yeah.
I don't want to dwell on this. I just want to throw this out there. We talked about this on a different podcast when we talked about Run Disney. These races are fairly expensive, but for the amount of stuff that they put into it with all the logistics, if you stay on property, taking the buses back and forth to the expo and the buses back and forth for the races and all of the stuff that they provide on the courses, I think if you look at like a Chicago, a New York, or the Marine Corps Marathon up in DC, I think the prices are pretty pretty favorable, pretty similar. So I think you get a lot out of it. And it just made me think about that as you're talking about like and the buses are running like every 15 minutes between each one of the resorts to get you back and forth to the expo over a 4-day period. So I think there's a lot of logistics that go around, that go into this race. So let's turn to the half marathon first, and we'll touch on the 10K possibly that Katie ran in the marathon. But let's talk about the half marathon first on Saturday. Just once again for marathon weekend, the expo kicks off on Wednesday. Thursday was the 5K, Friday was the 10K, Saturday was the half. And let's talk about getting there. The first buses left the resorts if you're on property at 3 a.m. And I think my wife read for a 5:30 start. And I think my wife read something where the buses run until 5. And we've always gotten on the 4 o'clock bus, and we barely made it out to the corral. So, Chris, how did it work getting for you guys there?
So the day before, I had texted with Steve being like, what's the latest we can leave? Because, it's pretty early morning. It was also the last day of our vacation. So we didn't want to like be up at 3 if we didn't have to. So our plan was to catch a 4 o'clock bus from Pop Century. We did do that. And our bus driver was sitting in traffic and then just decided not to do that anymore and pulled out and drove some magic different way and actually got us to Epcot pretty quick. So our bus driver knew what he was doing. Disney hires an outside company because they don't have enough actual buses to handle the people going to the theme parks just for life and the people going to the race because they're racing. And so it's probably people who don't know like the resort infrastructure as well, right? So they might not know the back roads or they might not know the fastest way, but our driver did, and we got there considerably faster than Stephen Wake, I think. When you actually get there, they do a bag check, security, just like as if you were going into the theme parks. And then it sort of has a free-for-all vibe. There are literally hundreds of porta potties, and there are so many people in line for the porta potties. I don't think I realized the logistics of 21,000 people going to the bathroom before a run. And so that part overwhelmed me a lot because I really did have to go to the bathroom and I didn't know how I was going to just... Also, let's be real. There's nothing enjoyable about using a porta potty. And it's certainly not the normal Disney experience you have, but it is a very normal run experience, right? Anytime you run one of these races, there are porta potties everywhere. So if you're used to running these races, you know that porta potties are just a part of it. But I know people on the course who were like, I'm waiting until we get to a theme park to go to the bathroom because I could use a real porcelain toilet. And so there are options. You can take pictures with characters. You can check your bag. They have these big trucks that you can put a clear bag in and pick up after you get back. So then you start heading out to the corral. And the one thing I would preface for everyone who's never done this before is that it is a long walk to the corral. It's not like the corral's right here. It's probably like a good mile walk, it felt like, to get out to where the corrals are. So it's one thing, you might think, oh, I'm here and I have plenty of time. But I would recommend at least giving yourselves a good 20, 25 minutes to get out to where the corral is before the start of the race.
And Lake, correct me if I'm wrong, that's really just for the half marathon and the full marathon, right? Because the 5 and the 10K, the corrals are a little bit closer to where the pre-race area.
Yeah, so for the 5 and 10K, the corrals are like basically to the left of that main stage. So they're right there. It takes you all of 30 seconds to get into them. Chris is right. That walk, even this year compared to other years, seemed particularly longer than in the past. So you really have to give yourself some time to get out there because it is like at least a mile, especially if you're going around and you're trying to get all the way up to like A, B, or C. You've got quite the walk.
Steve, what was your experience getting there you guys were at Kidani, what was your experience getting there and kind of going through the whole process to get to the corrals?
For us, like I said, I was out on a bus. My brother-in-law was up at like 2 a.m., so he ran his first Run Disney race as well, and he was up, I think, kind of just anxious. It's tough to sleep if sometimes you get a little adrenaline going. You're ready to go. It's like a lot of build up to this if you put a lot of training in and stuff. At least it is for me. But we were up very early, got out on a bus about 10 after 3, and I was there about 3:30 no problems. And I remember I was texting you, Steve, and you guys, I thought I was going to meet you before, and I was already walking to the corrals, and they were open by the time you were, just kind of filing in. So there was a big disparity. If you left a few minutes later, it seemed like you were going to, that traffic just started to accrue later in that hour, and it kind of all of a sudden became a little bottleneck. But I will say the other thing too, Chris and Lake, you know this too. I like starting. I did the other halves in the TTC parking lot, and this starts in Epcot, and it's completely different. The size and scope of what this was set up and how far you have to go out to the corrals relative to what was previously, like for Wine and Dine, is totally different. It is hugely spread out at the Marathon Weekend event. It was a little different for me to get out and look around. And I was going, another friend was there, my friend Peter, who runs a lot of these races and did Dopey this year. I was saying to myself, where are the corrals? Usually you can see them. When you walk in, you can see the huge balloon, and identify the corrals, and you're just waiting at a gate. You go out, and I was like, wait a second. There's a pre-lineup, and then you got to get released over the corrals. And that was a little different. The event itself, and it's if you've never done it, it's like really loud and like jumping in the parking lot. And my best advice is to kind of sit down. You're on your feet a lot, and use the bathroom. Use the bathrooms you first see when you're starting. Just take the earliest ones, because as you start creeping towards the corrals, there's more and more lines just before the race starts. So just even if you don't have to go, just go in there until you have to. It's my advice. There's nothing more uncomfortable than you're sitting in some of those corrals or even in the back corrals, and you have 25 minutes before you have to go, and you're like, oh my God, I got to go. I saw so many people as the race started run into the woods in the first 1/10 of a mile.
You do. You see people just kind of peeling off after they get past the official start line, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, those woods are probably a biohazard zone.
Totally.
They need some rains to clean it up. Our experience is it's completely different than what I've had in the past. In the past, it's been pretty easy to get on a bus around 4 or so and get out there for the marathon. But as we've already talked about, there was over 7,000 more people running, 7,000 to 8,000 more people running the half versus the marathon. I think our bus got stuck behind some of the Hollywood Studios traffic for people trying to make it there for the early morning for Rise of the Resistance, and then just the flow into Epcot itself. So the funny thing that we got was after we dropped our bags off, the clear bag that you're talking about, we went over. There's a huge group of porta potties awake, and I went over there to use them. And there's a guy in there with a megaphone going, "If you want to make the start of the race, you need to leave now because it's a 20 to 25 minute walk." And so we're like, "Oh man!" He's like, "There's porta potties near the corral." So we took his advice and we left. I was in corral B, and which corrals were you guys in?
I was in D.
I was in H. We didn't submit a time, so anyone who doesn't submit a qualifying time will be put in H.
Yeah. So it took a long time to walk out of the corrals, and it was just like wall to wall people, and I wasn't used to that either. It seemed like it was more open on the marathons, but I basically got up to corral B probably about 3 to 5 minutes before the race started, and boom, we were gone. So it all worked out. Well, let's talk about the race itself. Steve, what were your thoughts on the course and just kind of running the whole race itself?
Yeah, I think this is where it becomes like deeply personal in a lot of ways, or what you're there for. Because I think there's people that are there just to have as much fun as possible and take as many character photos as possible. And then there, you get folks that are trying to run it as fast as they can, and so there's a lot of different things. But for me, for whatever reason, it's the third one, and I always feel like when I go out, my legs are a little just like kind of dead right away, and because there's really nowhere to warm up, because it's so crowded before, and I wish there was a little bit more of that happening, but it takes a while, and then you're kind of bottleneck. And I just looked down at my watch, and my pace was like, and I'm not like that kind of brazen to go. I know a lot of people will go into the grass to kind of get around people and get up in front of their corral a little bit to breathe, but I just kind of rolled with it and let it just be like a warm up and got out there. It was definitely more, to me, it felt more crowded at the start, even though I was towards the front of the corral, honestly, than the previous races I had been a part of. It was the first time I ran through Magic Kingdom. That was pretty spectacular. I will tell you, that was awesome. The lights are still on the castle. And this, another thing I would say that I loved about this was there was a lot more spectators out on the course. I don't know if you guys can attest to this with other races, but apparently they've scaled back a lot of the spectating at other events particularly those that don't go through Magic Kingdom. You see a couple people like when we ran other courses, like over by the boardwalk, and a few people maybe in like Animal Kingdom here and there. But for the most part, I don't see a lot of people along the course. So having all these spectators was awesome. And I was surprised. I thought there wouldn't be as many for the half. There was a ton of people out there to me. And I loved it. It was energizing, even though, being frank, like I had a great first half of the race. I took a castle photo almost unintentionally. I kind of made a left. I kind of made a left into the photo pass as opposed to making the right past the castle. And I was like, I'm just going to go for it. So I just took some castle photos and just enjoyed myself and realized that about the 10K mark, I was so unbelievably like gross and sweaty that I was just gonna, treat the rest a little bit more like a fun run. Sure enough, like I got to the golf course and my right calf just like completely cramped up. I guess I was taking salt tabs. I was trying everything to stay hydrated, and it was just kind of rough. So I kind of cramped up, and then I just met somebody out on the course. He was doing a run walk split, and we just talked, and all of a sudden, before I knew it, like 4 miles went past. Got through Epcot, and I guess previously before Epcot had undergone all the construction, I think it was a little better finishing and way to end the race. But now you kind of run on the back end of Epcot and you see like the Guardians construction, and it's not wonderful. It gets a little tight there too. I took a little picture by the Mexico Pavilion. I guess it's Panchito. What's the character from the Three Caballeros? Somebody help me out. Does anybody know? Oh, we're so bad.
I think it was Jose who was out there.
Oh, Jose was out there. Okay. I took a picture over there because honestly, at that point, I just needed to stop for a second, even though I only had like 0.8 of a mile left. I was like, I tried to turn it on the last mile to look cool at the finish line, like to look strong. And I was like, you're not strong right now. You're feeling like death. Yeah, but it was good. I think I finished it at around 2:34. I don't even know if that matters. But to give you context, like I looked at my Strava afterwards, and it said that finished up at like 71 degrees and 92% humidity. Wine and Dine was 57% humidity. And in Florida, that makes such a world of a difference when you're out there for 2+ hours. So, that particular variable for me was rough. Even training in Tampa, it's still to get acclimated to that was a little rough. But I thought the course was great. I was glad to change it up, and get through the Magic Kingdom. It was quite honestly the best part of the whole thing. Maybe a bit of a duh moment, but it was even better than I had imagined, to be honest. It was so cool.
Any thoughts on the character stops or the water along the way? And then just kind of as you finished up, any thoughts on the medal itself that you won this year?
The character stops seemed pretty good. Although, I always I'll look at some message boards and people's comments, and, some folks I have nothing to compare it to. I have no previous marathon weekend experience. And I guess that's usually maybe there's more characters or more special things that they do during that weekend. But I thought it was pretty great. Sometimes I can get like tunnel vision when I'm out there running, and I'm not always like super cognizant of everything that's going on, especially because I usually don't have an intention of like stopping with characters and stuff like that. But I thought it was entertaining. And there was definitely parts of it. I think the second half for me was not as like aesthetic or entertaining as the first half. So once you get out of Magic Kingdom, it didn't seem as great. Another caveat. So if you're just a little run tip, one thing I didn't stick to myself, which I should have, is I never really drank Powerade during my runs, and I was taking Powerade a little bit while I was there. And I think that kind of feeling, like filling up your stomach and all that, wasn't wonderful, even though I felt like I needed electrolytes. But you can actually get electrolytes. You can get hydration if you just want to swish around water or swish around Powerade in your mouth, and then you can kind of spit it out. Just a little tip. So there were certain parts. There's a lot of water on the course. There's a lot of medical tents on the course, a lot of assistance. So from that perspective, if you're hesitant about Run Disney in any way, this is a race that is very well organized and supported when you're out on the course.
As we kind of finish up with you and we jump into Chris's and Seth's experience, any tips overall for people around Disney as we kind of talk? And we'll kind of do a final tips one between Lake and Chris and I, but before you leave, Steve, any tips as far as just the overall weekend, run of the race, or anything else that we haven't touched on?
Yeah, I know this is going to sound silly, but have fun with it. Because I think, you can get in your own head about running them sometimes, or just thinking you're going to complete it. You definitely can. You put in the work and stuff. But also, so I broke a little bit of a rule. We walked, because I had family in town and it was their vacation. I walked about, 20 miles before I ran the half on Saturday. Now, I know for all these dopey folks out there, I get it. You guys did your 48.6, you went to the parks and all that stuff, but I'm not that insane. I like to get out there with fresh legs. So I did a lot of walking with toddlers on my shoulders and pushing kids. And it was quite warm for January. And so that was a little rule I broke. So if you're going to vacation, if you can do it, ideally, maybe try to save some of your park time for like after you run your big long races a little bit, if you can, and not try to kill yourself too much before. At least that's what would be my recommendation. Overall, had a spectacular time.
Well, congratulations again. It's a huge accomplishment to run a half marathon. It's a huge accomplishment to run a 5K, to be completely honest. So congratulations once again, and just tough conditions out there. Well, let's turn to Chris. What were your guys' overall experience? What were your thoughts of the course and kind of your run as well?
Okay, so we didn't have anything to compare it to.
And that's okay.
So I think we were in the headspace of like, this is going to be what it is going to be. Seth made it clear to me pretty much before we did the race that this would be his last half marathon. He didn't enjoy the training. And honestly, he's in the majority there. I actually think people who enjoy running and get pleasure out of it are not a majority of people. And that's fine. It almost makes it more fun to do these weekends because you're with other people who enjoy something you also enjoy. And it's not that easy to find people who don't think like you're absolutely bananas for liking to run multiple miles in a row and 3 or 4 days a week. And so with Seth, we knew that going in. And so I adjusted all my expectations for the weekend. I decided we would stop at as many photo spots as we could, that we wouldn't really care about pace, that we would make it more of a, we're doing this thing together. And it turns out that it was still super painful and hard to do. And I think in my mind, I was thinking like, because we're not really worried about time and because we're not gonna like try to do any sort of PR, it won't be too much. But I think one thing that you have to think about with all of these is that in your training, it's not really about distance as much as it is about time on your feet. And so if you have never trained to be consistently moving for 3 hours in that way, by the end of that 3 hours, your feet are just going to hurt. And that's just how it works. And so I will say by the end, my feet hurt more than I thought they would. I was more sore than I thought I would be, all of that. But I enjoyed every minute of it. There wasn't a time when I felt so overwhelmed, that I thought I wasn't going to be able to finish. So I don't know. It felt really good, and it felt nice to have months and months of training pay off in such a cool way where you end with a medal. They also threw out some real random character meet and greets. We got to take a picture with Duffy the bear, which is like Mickey Mouse's teddy bear. And he's a really big deal in Tokyo. But the best part was he was dressed in like holiday attire and they were blowing fake snow during the picture. So I just felt like there were lots of fun, random photo ops that we were able to do. And overall, I would say like it was everything I wanted it to be and more.
Any thoughts on the medals this year, guys?
I thought they were pretty good. They reminded me, I don't know, I feel like it was shaped like my Star Wars medal. The Wine and Dine, I think it was because it was an anniversary year medals this year, were awesome. They were just like hefty and really well designed. I can only speak to the half. I did see all of them. They were all displayed at the expo, and I had friends that did the dopey, but I thought it was pretty cool. Wine and Dine's still my favorite, though.
How about you, Chris?
It was so pretty. I liked it. I also am not a big fan of Donald. It's not that I dislike Donald, but like because Donald's like whole shtick is just that he's pretty much grumpy and angry all the time. He's not my favorite of the Fab Five. And so I didn't have high expectations going in, but it was a really cool medal. It's very heavy. We decided to wear it all day, the day after we ran or the day of the run, because we paid for that. We deserve to be able to like show it off, which actually I highly recommend doing. If you run one of these races, wear the medal that day, because everyone is so excited to congratulate you and tell you how great you are. And it just feels cool, and it makes you feel like you've accomplished something. But yeah, the medals were flashy and showy and higher quality than some of the medals we've gotten when we've done other races.
Well, Steve, I know you need to go. Any other final thoughts before you get out of here?
No, thank you, guys. I'm going to run the Princess 10K coming up with my wife. I got her to do her first. Yeah, so she's been running and training and swearing at me for signing her up.
Sounds like Seth.
But I think what it really is my wife is uber competitive, and she probably wants to beat me across the finish line, which there's no reason why she won't. So I'm excited about that. And I might run I might get roped into running Star Wars. We'll see. We will see. But I love talking about these events, and thanks for having me on. I'm going to run back to work. Look forward to listening.
No pun intended. Definitely. Thanks for coming on, and we'll talk to you after Princess. So thanks.
All right. Take care, guys. Thank you.
Any final thoughts then, Chris, on the half marathon before we turn to Lake's experience with the marathon?
Only that I think a half marathon might seem really overwhelming because the word marathon is in it. But it was our first big race of this length, and with the training plan that Disney provides, it was possible. And not just possible, but we were able to do it successfully and feel really accomplished. So I just want to throw out there not to be too intimidated by that. The half marathon is the longest distance you can run in most Run Disney events. It's only marathon weekend that lets you do the full marathon. And so there are a lot of people who, for them and for the race weekend they do, the half marathon is like the marquee event. And I wouldn't be discouraged just by the fact that it is a marathon to sign up and do it, because it is a lot of fun.
Just kind of bouncing off of that, I agree with what Chris said. Just from the distance wise, the half marathon is a great race if you're looking to challenge yourself, but you're not looking to basically invest all of your free time into training. I basically spent almost 3 years exclusively running half marathons before I decided to go up into the marathon distance.
It's a great starting point, like you said. Obviously, if you're new to running, start with that 5K and kind of work your way up. But I totally agree with what you guys said. Let's turn to the marathon itself. Like, this was your first one. Kind of give us your overall thoughts as to why you decided to run this one now, and then just kind of step us through your day.
Like I said, I spent a lot of time doing kind of half marathon and lower distances, just between being in school and then, kind of working through after that with jobs and whatnot. I didn't want to commit myself to the training that is required to do a full marathon, but I always knew that when I was ready to do a full, it was going to be the Walt Disney World full. So when the registration finally came around for this year, I was like, yep, it's time. I'm going to go for it.
And you mentioned that part of the reason you didn't do that is because the step up in the level of training required for the marathon and the time commitment is just a lot more. Did you find that to be true? Did you have to really step up your training game for this one?
Yeah, honestly, I really did. So I have a Garmin watch, and if you have any of those tracking watches, most of the times they have an app and you can look at all your past data. Last year, running Princess and Star Wars, looking at my total mileage for the month, it was pretty low. And then once I started getting into September, November, December, I was doing basically quadruple, if not 5 times the volume of running that I was doing when I was compared to running the half marathons.
Yeah, it really starts adding up because you've got those long runs that you end up doing, 16, 17, 18, all the way up to, some people run up to 23, 24 or so before the race. But then your short runs are 10 miles. It's no longer the 3 miles or the 5 miles, which the distance really adds up, doesn't it?
Yeah, it definitely does. But it's definitely cool. Overall, I feel like I'm in some of the best running shape I've ever been in, which is cool. And I'm excited to kind of keep some of that consistency going through the rest of this season with a couple races coming up.
Well, I know this is a pretty tough race for everybody due once again to the heat and the humidity. Kind of talk us, how was it getting to the marathon and then the start, and then let's go through the course and what were your thoughts of running the whole thing?
Like I said, my experience getting to the marathon was super easy. We were at Bay Lake Tower. We hopped on the monorail. They do your bag check at the Contemporary, so didn't have to do bag check once we got to Epcot. And then you do have to switch at the TTC, but there was already a monorail there ready, so we just hopped on right over to that. And then we took the monorail over. We went over all that traffic, and they let you out in the front of Epcot. So you do have to kind of walk over to like the staging area, but it was fine. You passed a real bathroom, so I stopped there for that. And then I basically from there made my way back to the corrals. Like we said before, same situation as the half. It was quite the hike, and even from doing like a lot of these races and that setup in the past, I felt like it seemed longer than before.
So you guys get out. You're running in Corral A this time, which is near the. I know they have like some premier runners that start. Well, they start with the handicap first, right, and then the premier runners, and then Corral A. You had a friend Steve in it as well. Did you hook up with him?
So he also runs in Corral A, and we actually literally met during Princess. I think it was 2 years ago on the course, and we just like became friends and started meeting up in the corrals, and that's literally like our whole friendship is revolved around meeting up at these races, which is pretty cool. We met up with him and a couple other people who we knew running the races who were in Corral A, kind of all met up, and we just kind of sat there for a while. The race did start late. It was supposed to start at 5 a.m., which was the big deal because it was 30 minutes earlier, and, you know, they were pushing everyone to get there earlier. But because the course, like, actually closed some of the lanes to get into Epcot, the traffic was horrendous. So they kept telling us, like, oh, yeah, we're running a little behind. But they wouldn't say, like, oh, people are still trying to park and get to the corrals. That's why we're delayed. They were just like, oh, we're waiting for, like, clearance. So that was kind of unfortunate. So we started about 5:20. For some people who were there, you know, for their PRs who were, like, getting pumped up, kind of that additional standing around that you weren't planning on kind of teeters out some of your adrenaline. You know, 20 minutes for some people up there is, you know, 3 or 4 miles in some cases that you basically were going to be running in hotter conditions later in the race.
Yeah, good point there. Well, the race kicks off. You guys start, and Chris, were you able to see all the fireworks and everything? When you guys went through as Corral H, they kicked off the fireworks as well during the half, right?
Yeah, they do fireworks every time they release a group of people to run.
So I think that's kind of a neat touch that they do. So it doesn't matter. They don't just shoot the fireworks right at the beginning for just those premier runners, but they do it for each one of the corrals as you set off on your journey. So you guys start off. Talk a little bit about the course. What did you think of it? They changed it this year compared to the last couple of years. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, the course was pretty interesting. Overall, I really enjoyed it. There was a lot of great opportunities for spectators. So one of the big changes this year was you started the race and you almost immediately turn and go right into Epcot. So you're in a park, like, I think almost at mile 2, which was really cool. And they had you running basically in on the tram path if you're going into Epcot for, like, everyday people. So you were, like, running perfectly centered into, like, Spaceship Earth. And then you do, like, swing out to go onto one of the back service roads just because those roads are bigger. And also when you were running through that, you do like a turnaround and you were like perfectly centered to see the fireworks from like the start of the other corrals, which is pretty neat. And then you got to do a good loop through Epcot. It was probably a mile, maybe a little less. And then you actually went out the backside and you ran over past the corrals. So it was right at mile 4 when you start to pass the corrals. Like I was running by and there were still people starting the race. I think they were on like the last corral or two. But it was pretty interesting to like run by and see all of those people still starting.
And from there, you head up to the Magic Kingdom. I know my brother and his husband really loved the course this year because it cut out the long run along the highway. And I'm not good with the names of the highways, but there's a long stretch of highway that you had to go from Animal Kingdom all the way down to ESPN. So they really enjoyed it. From Epcot, you guys head up to Magic Kingdom and then over to Animal Kingdom. Is that correct?
Yep. So the Magic Kingdom part is the same loop. If you do the half marathon, you're kind of in and down Main Street, which is super cool because they let spectators in there. My wife was actually in there cheering for me, which was awesome. I got to see her then. And then you go back around Tomorrowland, back through Fantasyland and out through the castle. And then you go back through Frontierland and out the back. And then you're running up along like the resort road there past Grand Floridian and Polynesian, and at that point you're already halfway, and that had like went super quick just because there was so much spectating support and like so much to look at along that first half. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that sounds awesome because in the past you head straight up from Epcot. You don't go through Epcot, you just head up to the Magic Kingdom just like you did in the half, and then you're on that back straightaway for quite a while, heading down to Magic Kingdom. So you had a lot to look at to kind of keep your mind active to get to that halfway point. So I really like that.
Yeah, and then you turn off onto a service road, and this is the same road that if you run Star Wars or Wine and Dine, it's like the first 4 or 5 miles of that course. And so I was pretty familiar with the road, and I was like, oh yeah, this part always goes so quick. It's going to be great. It's like kind of in the woods. Well, when this part is on like the latter half of your first 13 miles, it is not nearly as fun as the first like 6 or first 10K of a race. But yeah, so you go along the long windy road, and then it's back by where they basically like burn their old food and stuff and turn it into energy back there. And that was actually pretty smelly. I know people have complained about it in the past, but I had never had a problem with it. I did this time. A couple cool things, though. You do go by like their greenhouses, so you can see like where they have all of their plants in their horticulture area. And they had like a little statue of Orange Bird, and they were spraying like orange sensor out onto the course.
Oh, that's kind of nice.
Yeah, and then you make your way into Epcot. You do go back through the back, and you kind of get to see like the animal enclosures and stuff, which is pretty cool. Sometimes you can kind of like peek in and see the animals still in there. And then you're pretty quick in and out of Epcot. You go in by Africa. Sorry, Animal Kingdom.
Right.
Yep, sorry.
It's okay.
I was like, animals.
In Epcot.
Yeah. Yep. Big switch up here. Anyways, you go into Animal Kingdom back by Africa, and you basically cut a left to Asia by Expedition Everest. So if the park is open there, you can ride that typically. They did also let spectators into Animal. I don't believe the park was open yet for regular like day goers, but there was a lot of people there cheering, and that was cool and kind of unexpected because I didn't know if there would be people out there like by the time I was there. And then you cut through Dino Land, and you're back basically heading around the road you were just on. So it's almost an out and back. You had runners on the left side there, and then you were on the right side. And then you turned up and headed toward Coronado, which is kind of cool because you could see the tower. However, at this point, you're at like mile 19 to 20, and it's uphill, like just slightly, and the sun is right in your face. This was definitely like one of the miles that really got to me. I will say, though, I will take this single mile like that over running Osceola, which is the road that you were referencing earlier, because it's only about a mile compared to Osceola, which used to be like a 5-mile stretch.
Yeah, it's a long straight 5 miles there.
Then we turn and you make a quick loop into Blizzard Beach. I don't think anyone really knew what to expect with this because it was the big like, oh, look at this new part of the course. I will say it was very tight in there. It was a lot of like weaving and like almost like 280-degree turns. Like you were almost doing full turnarounds at certain points. And it was almost confusing because they were like, okay, runners, you're turning around here. But it was still cool overall. Definitely like all of the swimming holes and stuff in there made you really want to jump in because it was very hot at this point.
My brother said the same thing. He was wishing he could jump on one of those water slides quick and then continue on.
You run kind of along that lazy river, and I was like, oh man, that would be perfect right now. But then you don't get to go in, unfortunately, but you run out the front. And you do, both coming in and out of the Blizzard Beach, you have to run like around the outskirts of the parking lot, which is just like not shaded and in the sun. So that was pretty terrible. Again, a pretty short distance overall, though. But then you're back out and you're on basically the road that's going to take you to Hollywood. This was a pretty quick part of the course. It's just a bit of highway, not too much to look at. But after about a mile or so, you were into Hollywood. Again, another very quick in and out. You go up by Fantasmic, past Tower of Terror. And this, with Rise of the Resistance, the park was open. So there was like hundreds of people there spectating just between being there for the race or making their way like to or from the attractions. So that was pretty cool. That was definitely like a good pick-me-up to have a lot of people there. But then you're out and you run the road to Hollywood to like the boardwalk area, around the boardwalk, and then you're in the back side of Epcot around World Showcase, and then it's the same finish that you guys mentioned, kind of out through the construction. And then you did it. You ran 26 miles, and it was something.
Congratulations once again. I mean, I love the ending there when you kind of go around. I wanted to. You don't realize how far World Showcase really is, or how long it is, because you jump into the start of it. What, by Canada, I believe.
Yeah, you come in basically right there between Canada and the UK, and then you run over towards France.
Yeah, and it's super cool to run along there. But man, in my mind, though, the 2 times I did the marathon, I was like, man, I didn't realize. You forget how big it really is as you're running along, and you just kind of want the race to be over by that point. But, or at least I did, I guess. Maybe I'm just lazy. So.
Oh no, I was ready for it.
Yeah. Any thoughts? I guess congratulations once again. Any thoughts? Any overall thoughts that we haven't talked about running your first marathon and running the marathon there at Walt Disney World with Run Disney?
Overall, it was really good. Again, it was hard and it was very hot. I think this is a great marathon for those that are looking to, run your first marathon. There's lots on the course. Of course, they had characters. I didn't stop for any this time, but potentially in the future I would. There are some races where I'll stop for characters. I thought it was a great race overall. I enjoyed the course. There were definitely things, like I said, moving from mostly racing halves to a full marathon that I wasn't ready for. You just got to make sure that you're really on point with your fueling, your water, your electrolytes, all of that kind of stuff. Just things that you really need to train and be ready for.
I agree with you totally as far as it being a great race for somebody that's new, just because of all the kind of distractions, I think, that are along the way for people to kind of keep, at least that's something that I need, which really helps me kind of motivate me to keep going. There's always something to look at, something to listen to, it seems like, as you're running along both of these races. So I guess just to kind of finish up, we'll finish up with some final thoughts. One thing to throw out there, they did at some point flag the race, so they shortened it by 2 miles, so it went from 26.2, I think, to 24.2 or 24. Do you know,
So they cut the Blizzard Beach part, is what they cut. Instead of making a right, you just turned left and you went over towards Hollywood. So yeah, it was probably about 2 miles, give or take, they cut out.
And I think, I know a lot of people are probably frustrated by that, but, I mean, good on Disney for making that decision. My brother ran in the Army 10-miler up in D.C. the same year. It was super hot that the Marine Corps Marathon went, and they didn't. And this is no slam on the Marine Corps Marathon, but they actually had somebody perish running it. They had hundreds of people in the hospital for that race just because of the heat that day. So, sometimes it's hard. So it stinks when you get to Castaway Cay and they just can't dock, right? Yeah, so good for them for making that decision. Chris, I want to go back to you. What were your thoughts running up Main Street towards the castle? What were your and Seth's thoughts? I mean, I think that is just one of the coolest moments when you run the half marathon and the marathon.
Yeah, I mean, it's iconic, and it's not something you can do with other races. Being able to run not only up to the castle, but through the castle, and they have it all lit up still for Christmas, so it's really beautiful. I feel like that's one of the premier moments, though the marathon seems pretty cool to be able to say you went to all 4 theme parks in one day. And not only that, but you ran through them. So that does sound like goals. I'm 99% sure I'm going to sign up for the full marathon next year during marathon weekend. And Seth decided he wants to do the 10K. And I'll probably run the 10K with him. So it sounds like my next marathon weekend will be exactly what Lake's marathon weekend was. So doing the 10K with your partner and then doing the marathon on your own. And I'm excited to be able to do all 4 parks.
Yeah, I think it's cool that they put that on the T-shirt as well, on the arm sleeves. I don't know if you noticed that, Chris, as far as...
which parks you go into on the sleeve.
Yeah, I think that's kind of cool. Well, as we kind of finish up, Lake, what do you have tip-wise as far as running for Run Disney, running a marathon first time? Any thoughts for people out there?
Like I said, I think as for Run Disney races, they're great first races for anyone. Disney really does cater more to the everyday runner or the first-time runner than they do, say, the elite runners. So if it's something that you think you're considering, I would say just go for it. Even if you just do the 5K to feel it out, they're untimed. They're super relaxed. There's not really a lot of pressure for those. Most of the time they don't sweep them. So I would say just go for it. And then if you are looking at maybe getting into the half or the full marathon, definitely do your research and make sure that you're trying to put in the miles to make sure that you can come out strong and finish those races.
And Chris, how about you being a first-time runner? not first time runner, but first time run Disney runner and running your first half. What are your thoughts and our final thoughts or any tips that you have that we haven't talked about?
So, I mean, my thing is, I'm not the person who ever thought I would run anything ever. And so my Run Disney story, I guess, is cool and hopefully something that other people who are on the fence could be, inspired by, which is that it's the sort of thing where you can start wherever you are and still make it work for you in some ways. And so we followed a training plan that involved for the first run ever, running 10 seconds at a time. And then we got to a place where we were able to do the entire half marathon. And so I think if it's something where it's I could never do that, something that's extremely satisfying about running compared to other sports is that it's something you do all just within your own self. You don't need a ball or special equipment necessarily. It's just within your own power, you get to do something amazing and push yourself. So I don't know. My advice would be, if you're on the fence, try it. And Disney is the best place to try it because it's a lot less competitive and a lot more fun, I would say. And that's an exciting environment to try something new.
I kind of want to echo your guys' thoughts and what you said as well. I mean, I really, we're all Disney fans, obviously, and I've always been a runner. My wife has been a runner too since college, and I'm just really impressed with the product of Run Disney. I'm impressed with the community around it. There's a Facebook group. I don't know if you guys are part of any Facebook groups, but and I'll give a plug for it, Team Run Disney on Facebook, which is a really supportive community. And I know there's some communities out there that kind of tear each other down, but that's been a great Facebook group to kind of follow along over the last couple of years as far as how supportive everybody is of each other. Well, I guess as we kind of finish up, final thoughts, Lake.
Overall, I thought it was a great weekend. I thought a lot of these courses and areas were a lot more spectator friendly than some of the past races have been. I did get to go and watch some people and watch some of you guys finish, actually. So I thought that was pretty cool. So even if you're just going to support someone, there's a lot to do. You can go over and get into Magic Kingdom and spectate from there. So just something to keep in mind if you're bringing friends or family with you.
And how about you, Chris?
I wish they'd bring Run Disney back to Los Angeles. I would be able to do it at probably the same amount that Lake is doing it if it was in my backyard. But I don't really foresee myself doing more than one race a year at this point in terms of Disney races, because there is a pretty big commitment to fly out to Orlando and stay in a hotel and all that stuff. And so my point would be, this was our first Disney race, but it wasn't our first race because we found races in our community and things that we could do in our own backyard. In a couple months, I'm running the San Diego half marathon, and I'm excited about that. So if you're interested in getting started, but you can't make it all the way to Florida, I get it. And I think there are lots of races, and the running community is also just a great community to be a part of. So don't let the barrier of getting to Walt Disney World be the thing that stands in your way, because there's literally probably a race going on. Not probably, there is a race going on somewhere in the country every weekend of the year. That's just a fact.
Well, you're running the half marathon down to San Diego. Lake, what's next for you?
I'm doing a couple locals, kind of in between all of the other big stuff. But then I will be running the challenge at the Princess Half Marathon weekend. And then I will be running the challenge at the Star Wars weekend. And I'm pretty sure already know we're signing up for Wine and Dine as well this year.
Well, Wine and Dine's definitely on our list. I don't think we're going to be able to do it this year, but I think my wife and Wake and I have committed to heading back to Marathon Weekend again. We're both going to do the marathon, and I think I might try and do Goofy this year. So that's kind of like our long-term plans coming up. And looking for a half sometime between now and then. And good point on yours, Chris. There's a little local turkey trot that we do every year here that's just a lot of fun, too. So you don't always have to do the big races. Those little 5Ks in your community are great to be involved with as well, too, because it's just such a fun community. So, well, thanks, guys, for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I really love talking Run Disney, and we'll keep it going. So, Lake, when you get back from when Princess finishes up, give us a shout out, and we'll do another episode then.
Yeah, absolutely.
And between now and then, where can people find you, Lake? I'd like to give you a plug for your YouTube channel and your podcast as well.
So my podcast is called Pretty Much Anything Nerdy. If you search that in the Spotify, Apple Podcast, all those good places, it should come up. It's just a big logo that says P-Man with Pretty Much Anything Nerdy under it. And then if you're looking for more Disney and Run Disney content, you can find it on our YouTube channel, MouseGen, or on our website, The MouseGen. And we have a ton of videos for a marathon weekend coming up. Lots of vlogs from kind of being there, watching the races, and even running the 10K. I took some video during that. So definitely go and check that out. And then we have all sorts of other videos, resort reviews, and whatnot coming out for all you Disney fans.
Thanks a lot, guys, and we will talk to you soon.
See ya.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. Once again, I really want to thank Lake and Steve for coming on and sharing their experiences with Chris and I during Run Disney's Marathon Weekend just 2 weekends ago. It was a lot of fun meeting Lake and his beautiful wife, Katie, along with Steve and his family. Also, Brian and Donna down there as well. So just a fun marathon weekend and actually connecting with Chris and Seth for the first time as well. We've got a lot of good feedback on our Run Disney episodes, so look for more of them in the future. The next up is Princess Weekend, so we'll be back to cover that as well. So if you would like to connect with us, you can always do so through Facebook at DCL Podcast. Also, if you'd like to come on the show, you can reach out to me, Steve, at DCLpodcast.com, and we will arrange a time to talk about either DCL, Disney Cruise Line, Adventures by Disney, or even a little bit of Run Disney as well. We'd love to have you. I know our listeners love hearing all of everybody's different experiences out there through all the different Walt Disney World events and Disney Cruise Line sailings. So between now and our next show, if you are heading out on your next vacation, all of us here at the DCL Podcast would like to wish you fair winds and safe travels as you head out on your next adventure. Once again, thanks for coming back and taking a listen, and we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast. The DCL Podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.